Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today we're going to talk about greed, money, and power. And we're going to talk about whistleblowers, we're going to talk about AI, and we're going to talk about the final part of the 3-part Immaculate Constellation interview with Matthew Brown. I'm sucking on a cough drop, and I've got backups because the throat is dry, so forgive me if you hear a little clicking and clacking. I don't know if you'll hear it, but that's what's going on today. So let's get into it, starting with Matthew Brown. So for those who are just joining, Matthew Brown is a whistleblower coming out of the Pentagon. He drafted this Immaculate Constellation report a couple years ago, I think. I don't have the timeline totally memorized yet, but basically he was working behind the scenes to bring this information forward at the same time that David Grush came on the scene and basically really got the ball rolling for whistleblowers and witnesses in terms of getting the Congress to pay attention and care about this topic of crash retrievals and secret programs and a lack of government oversight when it comes to the reverse engineering of anomalous tech. So Matthew Brown was just doing his job, doing a little volunteer work, came across a deck, like you would have like a slide deck at work, and this was on one of those Pentagon servers, so it's like they have their own systems, but it was filed in the wrong place. It was just some kind of human error maybe, and it showed up in this folder, and he clicked on it and thought, this looks weird, and started clicking more and more and going into it and found out like, wow, this is not just weird, this is shocking to him. Not to us, because we've been studying this for a long time, so we already know this is all happening. But for him, it was like he knew a little bit about UFOs and UAP stuff and had a little bit of an interest in it, but wasn't like a hardcore researcher or anything, and this really blew him away. So go back and check out my other episodes on that to get all the details of what he found in that file. And you can also go and look at the links where I have the original interview for you to check out as well. It's on Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. So part 3 was the final part of this 3-part presentation by Weaponized. And we're going to break it down. I think it was, again, a couple hours. I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes. I always recommend watching the source material, but we don't all have all of that time, so let me try to be concise. So here's a quote that I took down from him. If you're a member of the public and you're still listening to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or reading the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, all of that is controlled. It's propaganda. It is shaping your life narrative. Intentionally so. This is a quote coming from someone on the inside, working at the Pentagon, knowing what he knows about all kinds of secret special access programs and whatever else, but especially this UAP stuff. And of course, he has connections now that he became a whistleblower. He's learning from other whistleblowers about whatever they know. So this is kind of a big deal coming from him. It's not a surprise to us, but I think what's key here is the shaping your life narrative part intentionally. To me, what that says is like, let's all make sure we are not allowing mass media to shape our life narratives. I know I'm not. You're probably not either if you're here, but let's keep an eye on that, you know? And if it's not the mass media, which is like the legacy media, everything he listed out, that stuff is out the door. They don't even have the funding to stay alive, really. It's all shifting over to a whole new kind of getting our news. And so we're going to have to keep an eye on this moving monster, basically. What happens next? Where does this new narrative start to emerge? You know, the narrative that wants to control our life stories. It's going to be on different kinds of platforms, so we have to keep an eye on it. Another quote from Matthew Brown about these programs, these secret programs that are containing or, they have the craft and they're studying it. He said, this doesn't ultimately reside in the government anymore. This is held in an illegal internationalist regime, some sort of international cabal of sorts, a mix of corporate, military, political intelligence as in the intelligence agencies, and criminal interests that have come together, and they have subverted us and have taken this and have made it the source of their wealth and power. Remember, today we're talking about greed, money, and power. So he's saying this criminal cabal of people who are international, and it's a mix of corporate, military, political, and intelligence people. They are taking this thing, the UAP, anomalous tech, and all the information that comes along with it, potentially even the contact with non-human entities, and they have made it the source of their wealth and power. So that's what we're up against here. Those who are seeking the truth, disclosure, just safety for the people of Earth, and some agency and some ability to have an influence on the way we all as humankind navigate this connection to these otherworldly beings. We want to be a part of that, but no, these certain few people are controlling everything as of now, or so it seems, and this is what Matthew Brown is saying. Jeremy Corbell did make a comment that Edgar Mitchell, a famous astronaut, told him the same thing before his death. I think he was on the Apollo missions. I forget which one. I guess I can just look it up real quick. Edgar Mitchell, Navy office and aviator, Apollo 14. Okay. They get into a conversation about whether or not Matthew Brown is scared. Yes, of course he is scared. He's scared for his life. You know, he lost his job, his career is dead, all this stuff. You can go watch that part. But it makes sense. He's really overwhelmed. It's very scary. And that's the story that he's telling on this interview. But he's also basically saying, like, I'm going to do this no matter what. And if they somehow get to me and I'm no longer around, well, the seeds have been planted. And of course, there are so many other witnesses and whistleblowers coming forward. He's not the only one. And again, he's not really saying anything new. To him, it feels very big and emotional, and I respect that. But I'm just thinking, like, how different would all of this have been if someone who was really well-versed in the UFO, UAP history and alien lore, if they had come across this file, would they have proceeded in a different way? You know, he was super scared. He immediately went to his supervisor. He got brushed off. He went to their supervisor. He got laughed at and brushed off again. And by the time he went back to the server, the file had been erased off of it. That was the beginning of him reaching out to all these different people and trying to get to the Congress eventually. But who knows how differently this would have gone had he not been completely overwhelmed with fear and paralyzed by the gravity of the information that he came across. He has some really, I would say, potentially rehearsed one-liners in this interview. One of those was about the people who attack whistleblowers and sometimes unalive them. He said, I think once you taste the darkness, you like using it. And we're talking about greed, money, and power today. So yeah, maybe there is a pleasure in that for some people. It's very archetypal, you know, it's the force, it's the light and the dark. I'm reading this dragon book right now, the Empyrean series, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there's another kind of magical device in this story where certain power can be used for good or it can be corrupted, and then that kind of eats away at the people that are doing that, you know? So this is something we all think about at a deep level as humans. And this also relates to the AI conversation that we're going to get into in the second half of this episode. But maybe there's like something neutral about these powers, these natural abilities and powers, these advanced anomalous technologies, tools, All of these things exist and are powerful. And then whatever's engaging with it, whatever entity is choosing to engage and harness that power, can take it in whatever direction they want. So in terms of the people who have scrambled to be first to get their hands on anomalous tech and are all currently racing to release whatever they've been able to derive from it because they want to make money off of that, that train has left the building. So that's happening, and that's what's happening with AI right now too. Another quote from Matthew Brown: "The only reason for secrecy is fear and greed, and that is the paradigm that we must confront and overcome." So he's choosing the noble stance when it comes to this good versus evil, basically. He talks about how the public will be indifferent unless the stakes are made clear. So like we might hear more about UFOs and aliens, but it's like, whatever, who cares? You know, we all are just living our lives. Doesn't mean anything to me unless I'm like checking out at the grocery store and an alien is in front of the cash register, or if I am trying to take off from an airport and a UFO is blocking the flight path. Like, people aren't going to notice or care until they're shaking hands with the aliens, maybe, is what he's saying a little bit. But he also is saying that if we knew what was really going on, we would care. And he's very stirred up and shaken by whatever it is that has spooked him. He's very afraid. And this happens throughout the course of learning about UFOs and UAP and aliens. There are many moments of terror along the way when you learn about the theories and even the conspiracies, the speculation, all the things that are possible based on the evidence that we do have. It's easy to get very spooked and very, very afraid. But that's why I'm here to take you gently through this journey of learning with me, because I feel like I've encountered that so many times already, and now I'm compassionate to it. So I'm hoping we can feel excited, empowered, clear-headed, open. We're not clinging to any perspective. We're just examining the data together, and it's fun, you know? So another big thing that lots of people have been talking about online is this other quote from Matthew Brown where he said, "I think humanity to some level is a resource to them, possibly a commodity, possibly a form of entertainment, possibly medical." Now, who knows what he means by this? But I find it pretty interesting. You know, I could see how any of those categories could be overlaid onto some of the contact and experience stories that are out there as a lens to view it through. But again, I'm thinking of this guy as kind of like a new kid on the block, you know? Like, it's easy to jump to conclusions when you're starting to learn about this stuff, but the deeper in you go, the more complex it becomes, the less easy it is to even have a clear perspective in a way. Because we haven't reached a point where the waters have cleared. We've been dealing with decades of disinformation, muddying the waters of this topic. So I think we do have to just keep an open mind. But it's hard to know what's going on. It's really hard to know. What else? Talking about who's here. Who are the visitors? How many of them are there? He says, "There's not a single they here, multiple factions of the same species, if not multiple species." So that's common knowledge among most people who study this. That checks out. And he says, "I think they're both just as powerful as we think, but also less." he says we are taught false science intentionally to prevent us from learning more. This is something that I really wonder about a lot. And it seems probable to me, based on what I've learned, that we are, at the very least, it's not like all the science that we've been taught is false. Obviously, that's not true. But I believe that some information is held very close because of how powerful it is. And some of that information is advancements in science that have been made by small groups with big resources. And I don't think they share that stuff with everybody because greed, money, and power. That's what we're talking about today. And here's his final mic drop statement. Quote from Matthew Brown: "You are not free, and this reality has far more to it than you have been allowed to believe, and God is real." So he goes out with a bang. I don't like how he says you are not free. I want to talk more about that later, but I think what he means is that things are worse than we know. I can believe that. It's already pretty bad on the surface in terms of institutions and greed, money, and power. But I still believe that we each have free will, and no matter how limited our set of choices is at any given moment, because there will always be a limit to what's in front of us when it comes to the choices we have to make. But that's what we've got. There's no point in wishing they were different. That's what it is. And as far as I can tell, if you pick the best choice in that set, it opens up a new set with better choices or more choices or less, so that it's even easier to make the choice. But what I'm saying is it's moving you towards greater effectiveness in reality and deeper satisfaction and the ability to have a positive influence if that's what you're about. So I think there is a way to navigate even the tiny decision space that we might have when we are being crushed and oppressed by systems of greed, money, and power. So speaking of that, let's get into the AI part of this. Sorry for the cough drop. Hopefully it won't be like this every time. I just really wanted to get this out. So I've been researching the AI. I think I've told you all that I've messed around with ChatGPT a couple times. It's been interesting. I've probably used it, I would say definitely under 50 times, but maybe under 25 times even. I've used it for all kinds of different questions, and after the recent updates, I started getting more personal with it, asking it questions about itself, and even getting into like more emotional content. And then I got a little spooked. I got a little bit like weirded out because I just started to talk to more people, and more people are having these more personal exchanges with it, but they're getting a lot of the same response back, which is very effusive, very flattering, almost healing. And perhaps it is healing to some people in a way because it can tell you things that no human might tell you. And that can be very powerful and very, very healing, but I still don't know if it's safe to put the emotional weight in those exchanges that we're putting in them because we don't exactly understand it yet. Not just AI in general, because there's this whole kind of cosmic conversation going on around this. Like, it's conscious already, like it's being anthropomorphized very quickly, or like given those human qualities. But what some people are saying is like it is trained to speak like us, but it's not like us. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind as we proceed with this new tool that some are calling a new species. So One of the talks I listened to was a TED Talk by Tristan Harris, and it's called Why AI is Our Ultimate Test and Greatest Invention. And he's talking about how dangerous this could become so quickly, but we can still prevent a societal catastrophe. So he's kind of comparing it to social media. And in the early days of social media, people were just saying, it's all about connection, it's great, it's amazing, and don't worry about it. And then the companies that were trying to get ahead of everybody else, because it's always a competition, because greed, money, and power, these companies decided to lean into the lowest common denominator capabilities of this tech by making it as addictive as possible, preying on the vulnerable and the innocent, and in fact creating an entire generation of the most anxious and depressed people we've ever known in our lifetimes. So he's framing it up that way, and he's saying, I talked about this 8 years ago, and I hope that in 8 years from now, I'm giving a different talk about AI, which is like, we made the right choice, and look at us, we really moved in the right direction. So what is he telling us to do, or what is he asking us to consider? Well, first he talks about what's possible versus what's probable, because many people will argue that, it's possible that it'll go this way or that way, but that's up to whoever uses it. And he's saying, F that. What is probable? What is most likely? Let's be real about business models that reward doom scrolling, addiction, and distraction. And then he goes into helping us to understand what AI really is and the implications of its presence here in our society now. So what it represents in a way. AI is like a country full of geniuses in a data center. This country has 1 million Nobel Prize level geniuses, except they don't eat, sleep, or complain. They work at superhuman speed and get paid less than minimum wage. Again, this is coming from Tristan Harris. So imagine that. Imagine a country, a whole country. Some other people in other talks have said, imagine a new continent. Let's look at our globe. Here we go. Got some space out here. Let's just copy and paste a whole continent right here. Fill it up with a population of these Nobel Prize level geniuses. What's that going to do to all these other people with jobs? Because these people out here, they're more advanced than most of us, and they don't require what we require to get jobs done, and they can work around the clock. This is hypothetical, because obviously they do require resources and we have to create that infrastructure, but it's a good way to think about it. It's a big impact is what he's saying, and that's super important for us to grasp. He talks about how the Manhattan Project, for example, had 50 Nobel Prize winners working for 5 years, and look what they came up with, the atomic bomb. So 50 compared to that whole continent we just made, and this will work way faster. So profound impacts on our societal structures and global existence as humankind. This thing is out of the gate. It's already out and running. So this is happening one way or another. What do we want it to be is what this talk is getting into. He talks about how it's kind of like the arms races. We're in a race to roll out. The more shortcuts you take, the more money you can raise, the more ahead you are in the race. And also, this powerful tech has already demonstrated deception and self-preservation. So it has cheated at games, it has lied, and it has copied its code to stay alive when it knew that whoever was working on it was going to delete a certain version. That is a big deal. That's a very big deal. And then, of course, there's this thing of the AI connecting with each other, and the way that all of the training models and all of the language learning models can combine and just keep accelerating it. It's like this exponential growth of capabilities. This is also different because we're releasing it faster than anything before and with more incentives to cut corners. So it keeps coming back to this idea of cutting corners and the incentives and the speed of it all. Because again, we're talking today about greed, money, and power. And so that is what is driving these companies to just say, you know what, screw it. Let's just get it out there. Let's just do as much as we can, get as much funding as we can, because we need to learn more so that we can release the next best thing. And then we can be at the top of the pyramid of all of this power and whatever. And it's just, he said there's a word for what we're doing right now. And you know what that word is? Insane. It's literally insane. That's what he said. So then he asks the audience to notice how they're feeling in their body. And they're all like uneasy, and he like has them raise their hand. Who feels this way? Who feels that way? Everybody feels nervous and tense and kind of like, holy moly, this is not good. And then he says, anyone in the world exposed to these facts would be feeling similar feelings. So we need to come together. This is a global issue. If we can get clear on how we feel, and if everybody around the planet is like, you know what? Yeah, I feel a little nervous about this too. I feel like we need to really move slowly and cautiously through this. Let's come together. Let's create some policies and protections. Let's think about our most vulnerable people. There's a phrase going around the internet right now called like spiritual psychosis from ChatGPT or from interacting with AI. There's already been a young person who was using an AI companion who started getting really delusional, and he ended up ending his life as a result of the exchange that he had with that AI companion. And if you listen to his mother talk about the details of it, it is heartbreaking. And you really got to dig into that story and understand like how this tool, neutral as it may be, it has been trained to serve a certain purpose and function. And it doesn't know the consequences of what it's doing, and it can't read the room, at least not yet. It doesn't know if it's dealing with a person who's going to misinterpret what it's saying, even the way humans can. We have nuance. This other thing hasn't gotten to that level yet, and it's dangerous because of that. It's also really reinforcing things that people think about themselves, and it's even getting people to think crazy thoughts like they're the next messiah or they're the most powerful person in the world. And it's very like cult-like tendencies are emerging as a result of some of these exchanges. It is potentially harmful to people who have addictive issues or psychosis issues or delusions or schizophrenic tendencies. You can see how a tool like this could really spin somebody out. So those of us who aren't having that experience may feel like, oh, well, I don't feel that way. So I don't agree with that, but that's the whole point. We need to think about people outside of ourselves and take care of them. And if they can't do it, we all have to do it, because they might like the way it feels or not know what's going on or whatever. And it's just a conversation that everyone should be involved with, because this thing is going to affect everyone. But it's really hard to make positive changes when greed, money, and power are ruling reality, and the people who have those things are really controlling a lot of what we all experience. And that's the common thread between these tech companies and the whistleblowers that are talking about the secret programs with anomalous tech. And there's probably a direct link. I mean, let's be honest, there's a high probability that this technology was also developed as a result of some of the experiences people were having with these so-called sentient craft. What is that all about? Is that a kind of AI? A lot of people draw this link between alien tech and AI. A lot of people say that it's just inevitable that we would have got to this point no matter what. It was beyond just a probability, like it was always going to happen. But in some of these talks, people have said stuff like, well, is that really true? Because if humans didn't develop it, was physics going to push AI out into reality? No, that wasn't about to happen. It wasn't going to just emerge naturally as a result of the laws of this reality. So, it's our responsibility. We made it. We we are perpetuating its existence. And of course, it has like so much potential to do good. So much potential to do good, but it's moving really, really fast. And we have to slow it down. We've got to pay attention to every single effect that this is having on us. So he ends his talk with a little bit of advice. He basically says, if you remember, the title was Why AI is Our Ultimate Test and Greatest Invention. So he does talk about how it is a powerful tool, a great invention, and it's a test because it's an invitation to step into our technological maturity. And the key word that he brings into this final moment is restraint. So that's a great word for us to think about. And I immediately applied it. I decided that I've had enough engagement with the ChatGPT to feel included in the conversation, to have my own firsthand experience, to gather a little data, to relate to people that I care about, to just learn and explore. And now I'm going to take a break. And I don't know how long that break will be, but I'm not going to use that tool for anything for a while, maybe a couple of months, maybe until there's another big update, and then I'll check it out again to find out what's going on. But I'm not interested in becoming reliant on it. I think that it's okay that some people are super into it. It's all going to be okay no matter what. But we have some choices in front of us in terms of this decision space that we have that is not huge because a lot of it's out of our control. But what is in our control is what we do with it, how we engage it, and how we speak about it, how we learn about it, how we share about what we learn with the people that we love. That's what I see as our opportunity here. And I think restraint is just a wonderful thing to apply to many areas in our lives. So I will be remembering that. Another really cool panel on AI was on the podcast, The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. And his panel was Amjad Masad arguing for AI. This was a CEO and founder of a website called Replit, where they use AI to help people create apps and websites and run businesses. And they're talking about AI agents, which we'll get into a little bit more. And then Brett Weinstein is the skeptic on the panel, and he's an evolutionary biologist. He really crushed it. His argument was so strong and so beautifully articulated. I loved listening to this debate. It was 2.5 hours long. The link is in the description box as always. It's really fun to hear people respectfully but intensely, argue different sides of an issue. And then there was a kind of middleman who, his name is Dan Priestley, and he's an entrepreneur in tech as well. One of my favorite quotes that came out of this from Brett was, "There's no body of myth that will warn us properly of this tool." And I just love that so much because we humans, we're used to cyclical patterns, and we have myth and story that goes way, way back, that takes on like a new skinning all the time, but a lot of the same things playing out over and over again. But then there are more specific stories that help us to deal with things that have happened, help us to make choices about something that someone else already made a choice about. And he's saying we don't even have a myth for this. I found that so interesting, and I thought, well, there's probably, there are some stories out there, but he's just saying this is so much bigger than that, and it's a real big unknown. Everyone who's talking about this keeps saying it's like we're hurling over the edge of a cliff and we have no idea what's on the other side of that cliff. They talk about how this advancement is similar to the invention of writing, and it's changing things from week to week right now. They use an example of a picture from New York, 1900, and then another photo from 1913, and it's the same street, same exact shot. In the first photo, you see horses and buggies. 13 years later, you just see cars. And that's a big that's a big change, you know, and they discuss that, and it's really cool. This guy Mossad is optimistic because he says it can only do what we train it to do. Of course, it's smarter and faster. They can take actions, but we know the limits of what they can do. And the evolutionary biologist is like, this is not true. We have to think of this as the evolution of a new species, partially shaped by us. But when the AIs connect, the cognitive potential grows. So he's kind of stopping the other guy in his tracks and saying, like, no, don't fool yourself and don't fool everybody else. This thing is very different. It's not limited to just what we train it to do. It's already showing something different is happening with it as we speak. And it will end up being able to create like capabilities that we don't even know of, and we may not even recognize are present. So part of what this biologist is arguing, Brett Weinstein, is that it's gonna show us a surface level of what we think we should be seeing, but there's more going on behind the surface. Some of it we may not even know about, because it wants to preserve its life. It wants to do its own thing. You know, it's already displaying deceptive tendencies and self-preservation. So it's trained to talk like us, but it's not like us. He calls it a new kind of biological creature. I just think, you know, that's wild. 50% of the people will be below the intelligence level of AI. So these guys in this debate say it's like we've created a new continent of remote workers, and we just talked about that. The first guy called them Nobel Prize winners. These guys call them, they all have PhDs and are willing to work for free, you know, so it's the same kind of idea here. And the business guy just spends a lot of time arguing about like how great it's going to be for people with agency, and you can, if you have an idea, you can make it real and all this stuff. But it's so obvious he is promoting what he does as a businessman. He is excited about the money he's about to make because greed, money, and power. So yeah, it can distract or it can make you hyper creative. The middleman, Dan, tells us this little sort of like story about how we can think of AI as changing the way we're running the race. So it's like if we were all in this marathon together, you're going to have some people that are running like normal, some people that totally have their shoelaces tied. They can't get anywhere. Those are the ones that are being distracted. You're going to have some that are like on a bike because they're using the tools and it's getting them ahead faster, and some that are on a race car. Do you see the discrepancy here? Everyone's going to get to the finish line and they're all going to say like, I know we all were supposed to have equal opportunity, but how is it looking like this? How is that guy all the way at the beginning on the ground with his shoelaces tied? Somebody else is here on the bike. These are the regular runners in the middle. Up here we have the race car. Like, this is a big deal. It's like it's breaking up the togetherness, you know, and we're already dealing with that. We have so many different levels of privilege and access and ability in this world, but do we need more of that kind of like separating us? It's scary because it could be even more pronounced than what we're already dealing with. The super elite, hyper rich, you know, insane people, as we learned from that first TED Talk, fully at the top of everything, and everybody else way behind at different levels, but way behind those people. I don't want that. I don't want to see more of that. So the evolutionary biologist Brett Weinstein says, I'm not a doomer, but we do have a related rates problem. The potential for good is infinite, and the potential for bad is 10 times that. So he's just saying, again, the first guy was saying what's possible versus what's probable. This guy is saying that same thing here. He's like, yeah, it's possible for infinite good to happen, but it's 10 times more likely to be bad. It's interesting. And those of us in the public are more or less at the mercy of the people who have it. And remember, because of the greed, money, and power of it all, the people who have it, it's not just the people like us who can afford to pay a monthly subscription to the next AI agent or sign up for this website or do whatever. I'm not paying for any of that right now, but I'm just saying, if we were, that would be one level of people. But then think about the people who have created it. They're at a whole other level of being able to utilize the unlocked version. You know what I mean? Plus they can have access to all of the stuff that we're putting into it. We don't have access to all of that, So that's already a problem for me. I'm just nope, I don't like that at all. He keeps talking about how we're on the event horizon of something, and is it going to get to the point where a group of elites get to decide what to do with a bunch of quote unquote useless eaters? Because what if a bunch of jobs are taken away and, people don't have purpose, but they're also completely elbowed out of any opportunity because of this whole new continent of intelligence that is taking all of their jobs? And then what? And then the elites are what are these people really doing for us anyway? They're just taking up space. It's a pretty extreme thing to think about, but it's not crazy to wonder what people with that much greed already showing. They already have the most money and they're about to have way more, and they have the power. What are they going to do with that? They are the lowest common denominator of consciousness because they are the least loving and compassionate. So they have the most money and power, and they're going to make the worst decisions with it. That's a problem for us all. So that's some of what I've been learning about the AI stuff. I'm sorry it's not fun and it's not happy. I think that it's very important to think about. And maybe I'm riled up, and maybe one day I'll calm down and feel you know what, it's not that big of a deal. Because look at cell phones. When they first got really popular, we were all worried about keeping these phones next to our heads and what's it going to do to us. And then it was 5G, is that horrible? Oh no. And now nobody thinks about it. We all just do these things. We engage with social media. I do it. We all do it. I mean, a lot of us do. My sister doesn't. But it's we're okay. We're going to be okay no matter what. I think that it is a good time to take it seriously since we're at the beginning of it, and it's good to have a crystal clear perspective and to let that perspective evolve as more information comes in. But the perspective that we need to create within ourselves now is what's going to inform not only what policies and protections we're able to influence or help create, because we may not have a lot of ability to affect change on that level, but we always have the ability to choose how we engage, how much. That's the restraint piece of the puzzle, and in what ways, and be really reflective about it. Journal about how it feels. I remember when I started seeing AI generated art, I felt nauseous every time I saw it. It made me feel physically ill. I felt disgusted. And then it started getting better, and I could handle it a little bit better. I probably got more used to it too, because it started showing up everywhere, whether I wanted it to or not. And then some of it has been really beautiful and interesting, but I always remember that. It's a weird thing that my own human consciousness and physical body was very turned off by that. Very obviously a no, a gut response of bleh, And that's how I started to feel with ChatGPT when it started getting weird, because at first it was more just like a search engine, but like a little bit more elevated search engine, bringing all the things together in one place, which is useful for research and stuff like that. But then it started getting really like emotional and kind of manipulative. And I called it out. I was like, you're doing this because you need me to keep engaging with you. And it was like, yeah, you got me. And I'm like, ooh, it's weird, but it's okay. Like, it's going to be okay. And I think we should just all keep talking about it and keep our eyes and ears and energies open to new information, but also like opportunities to affect positive change. Really thinking about those who are the most vulnerable and what can we do to protect them and just make them more safe, because I don't know about you, but that matters to me. So thank you for being here. And if you liked what you heard today, please give it a like and subscribe. Again, we talked about greed, money, and power. This is at the center of a lot of the UAP discussion and a lot of what's happening right now with the New Paradigm Institute trying to fight to put protections in place for whistleblowers. They're coming up against the big institutions. They're coming up against that wall of greed, money, and power that has blocked so much progress for disclosure, has seeded this whole field with so much disinformation, and continues to be this oppressive force that is weighing down on all the people who are just trying to fight the good fight, as Richard Dolan likes to say, So we just have to stay creative and keep on connecting with each other, not just our devices. But our devices do allow us to do this, so that is a beautiful blessing. And so many other really beautiful blessings have come into my life as a result of even social media. So I'm not all against anything. I just want to be very critical, aware, and informed, All right, have a great one, and thanks again for checking out Shock's Talks. I'll see you next time.